Once we've downloaded the ERG 2020 app to your smartphone or device, go ahead and click on that. Once it opens, we're going to start by looking at the blue and yellow section, just like you would in the regular ERG printed guidebook. Remember, the yellow section we'd look up chemicals by number, and the blue section we'd look up chemicals by name. By clicking on that, we can now enter a number or a name, and in this case we're going to enter 1203, and that's gasoline, and 3 other chemicals. We're going to select gasoline, and it's going to take us to guide 128. Once we do that, it automatically takes us to the correct orange guide page, and this one lists a group of chemicals that are flammable liquids that are water immiscible. This guide is not specific for gasoline, but it includes many chemicals that are flammable liquids that do not mix with water. As we scroll down, we can look at potential hazards. In this case, we're going to look at fire or explosion, or the health hazards. Whichever one is listed first becomes the greatest hazard of this group of chemicals, and some of the information is not particular to gasoline. Again, it's going to be for a group of chemicals that are flammable liquids. So make sure you take that into consideration. Scroll down a little further and we can come to public safety. The first thing it will tell us to do is to call 911. And even if you are a first responder, remember that this is a cue for you to call the additional resources that you might need. That may include additional fire, EMS, police, or other special resources. It may include a hazardous materials team or the Department of Environmental Protection. But make sure you make those notifications. And then it has a checklist of things to do while we're on scene, like keep people away, stay upwind and uphill, ventilate closed spaces. A little further down, we'll look at protective clothing, and for this group of chemicals, we're going to wear an SCBA, and it'll tell us that structural protective clothing only provides limited protection. What that means is you are not going to be protected from the chemical, but if you can stay out of the liquid chemical and wear your SCBA, you may be able to go in and do a quick rescue of victims as long as you stay out of the actual liquid. You can look up further information about that by going to the white pages in the rear of your book to get information about protective clothing. The next section down is evacuation, and it will tell us to immediately isolate in all directions 150 feet. That 150-foot radius from the spill becomes what we call a hot zone. The standard in this manual is to evacuate and isolate 75 feet for solids, 150 feet for liquids, and 330 feet for gases. That's not set in stone. Make sure that you're looking up each chemical, but that is the standard. For large spills, it will tell us to consider initial downwind evacuation for at least 1,000 feet. So one easy way to do that is to look at the top corner where it says map, and we can go ahead and select that, and then we can pick the spill location. So we can either set, using our GPS in our phone, the current location, or we could put in the address. So in this case, we're going to put in an address. And now that address comes up on the screen. We'll also hit wind direction. Now, if we know which way the wind is coming from, we can go ahead and just select that. Or we could also hit the compass button on the top. And in that case, we can move our device until the wind is blowing into our face. And once we have that, we can hit the select wind direction, and we'll set the wind direction based on actual on-scene conditions. Go ahead and click back. Now we can hit spill details. We're going to either have a large spill or a small spill. Remember that a small spill is classified as something 55 gallons or less, and a large spill is greater than 55 gallons. So we'll keep it as large. We'll scroll down and we can either select a standard map or a satellite map. I'm going to go ahead and select satellite. And then overlay is going to give us an opportunity to choose the color and the opacity, or how dark that color will be over the map. So we can go ahead and adjust that however we'd like and pick whatever color you are comfortable with. Once we have all that information, we can hit the top plot button. And once we do that, we are opening up this screen. Now, it's a little bit hard to see, So what I'll do is I will go back and I'm going to go to the color section, and I am going to make it a little less transparent. Once I do that, I can go back and replot that. And now what I see is this yellow circle that becomes my hot zone, 150 feet in all directions. We can also see that there's a cone that shows us our evacuation distance. So anything within that cone becomes a property that we need to either evacuate or isolate all of the victims in place. Now, if we don't have the exact location from our phone, we can move this location by holding our finger down on the location of the spill, and it will move the spill to the location of the actual event. That comes in handy if we use choose current location, and we're obviously not standing in the middle of that spill. At any time, we can hit back and go back to that emergency response guide page, and we can go down and figure out what we need to do if there's a fire, how we would put that out, what chemical agents, or are we going to use foam, or are we going to use straight water? And it will give us information on how to put that fire out. Further down, it will give us information on how to manage a spill or leak. Remember that spill or leaks should be managed by technicians. So if you're not trained to the technician level, you wouldn't be managing that spill or leak in an offensive way. If you're not trained to the operations level, you would not be handling any type of spill mitigation. Then the last section is first aid. So if we go down to the first aid section, we can figure out how to manage any of these victims, typically getting the victim out to fresh air, and then removing their clothing and washing them with water for 20 minutes. So that's just a quick overview of some of the things you can do with the Emergency Response Guidebook app.